Good afternoon, Khambrel Marshall, KPRC 2 meteorologist. Last week around this time I was saying, you know what, it looks like we're going to have a wet Mother's Day and don't plan outdoor things for mom on Mother's Day weekend. Well, it looks like that's happening right now. So let's talk about what we're dealing with out there. Overcast skies outside the KPRC 2 studios and rain out there on the Southwest Freeway as well. It's all around. Temperatures have cooled off quite a bit. We were at 80 degrees a little bit earlier this morning, early on, inland. Like Sugar Land was 80 degrees and College Station was in the 60s. You can tell where the rain is and where the rain has not been. 80 degrees in Galveston now that you know it hasn't been raining in Galveston this morning. Up to the north in Sugar Land now, cooled off to 72, 69 at Bush, 70 in College Station, 67 in Columbus and Wharton. The winds primarily are still from the southeast. That is what's helping to feed into the atmosphere. There's enough lift in the upper levels of the atmosphere associated in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And the surface, that wind coming in from the south and southeast is bringing in that moisture. And that's why we have what we have here. This is our newest radar product, Storm Tracker 2 radar. This is a different view. And you can see where the rain down to the southwest is building up once again. Doesn't have a whole lot of lightning with it at this point, as it did when it was a squall line very early this morning. And also, just inside the North Loop, starting to build there as well. Here's a different look at that and a different radar product that we have here. Notice the rain coming in from down Matagorda, Brazoria counties, coming back up through Victoria, those Jackson counties, and moving up. That is what we're going to be seeing more of in the main part of the Houston area. For right now, there's a little bit of a break on the western parts of Harris County. We took the cloud cover off so you can see a little bit better how the rain is forming there, right just to the North Loop, going up Interstate 45 up toward North Harris County, and down to the south and west, that line of storms that are building up and sliding up from Wharton and Bay City, Surfside, sliding on up the way here. Here's what we're looking at up near Conroe, moving up toward Conroe. These storms moving up in that direction from the southeast, sliding on up down to the south there. A little bit of a gap, a little bit of a break there along Interstate 10 where they had rain earlier. Not consistent rain, but this showers popping through. Now the broader area of rain is right there inside the loop, building up and moving on up Interstate 45, dropping some pretty good little rainfall there and some lightning associated with it as well. We pull out a little bit, you can see the colored boxes which indicate the flood areas, flood warnings that are out there, and aerial flood advisories that are up there in place. Aerial flood advisory until noon. I think that's probably going to drop because the rain has moved out of there quite some time ago. It's been draining. There's a flash flood warning that's still in place for some areas that are farther inland and to the west, closer towards San Antonio, where they had a lot of rain. Some early estimates 4 to 6 inches of rain this morning from some of those heavy downpours. Looking in really close here, this is that area in Cuero, and then southwest of El Campo, where they still have the flood advisory until 12:15. So that's going to be changing, of course. And you look out, I'll put the clouds back in play here, seeing this line of storms moving on up into Fort Bend County and down in south of Brazoria, moving on up, as they say. And it's kind of a thin line as it moves on. Nothing severe with this at this point, but we're going to keep an eye on all of that, as all of that is training, moving up from south to north. And we pull out on the big picture and look at the whole state, you can see what I'm talking about. The rain from the Gulf, it's got the nice little line sliding on up right through Houston, going up to the north, where there's a little thin line associated with it. We have a nice relationship with the Harris County Flood Control District, showing these numbers for the last 3 hours. For example, Spring Creek at Hager Road, 9/600ths of an inch, just under an inch. Little Cypress Creek in Becker, that's 88/100ths of an inch. Little Mound Creek, Mathis Road, 1/3 of an inch there. Slide down to the south a little bit. You can see about 1/2 an inch there in the 3-hour time period, so very manageable. It's very inconvenient, but it still is manageable. Farther to the south you go, there's less rain. That's going to be changing over the next hour or so. We'll start to see an increase in intensity and building up going forward here. So our flood watch, we still have a flood watch through tomorrow actually, and most of the western counties are in that flood watch, and this with good reason, because what we've seen overnight was a squall line developing and moving over, and that has dropped a lot of rain in those counties. A good reason for them to have that watch in that area. Severe threat today, we're all in the low, the marginal area. Now this has changed a little bit because earlier this morning and late last night, the Houston area was in a 2 So a 2, a slight threat, 2 out of 5, and now we're a 1. It's mostly a rain thing more than anything else. So that's the deal for us today. So the flood risk area, we still have now for us a moderate flood risk instead of the very high flood risk at this point. So the forecast conditions are improving as we go along with this. Now here's one of our HRRR, we call it the HRRR storm tracker, pushing this forward, and it's a little bit behind what's actually happening out there, because you see the rain that's moving through Wharton now, or it's a little bit ahead of what the model is tracking. It still brings it in. It's a little bit behind, so instead of 5, look for it to be around 3 as it moves on in this area, and instead of 8, look for it to be like 6 to 8. And as it moves on out of here, 9, more like 8. And then moving on out of here like 3 o'clock in the morning, we'll start to see a little bit of that in the overnight hours. And by tomorrow, we get a little bit of a break in the morning. And by the time we get to about noon and 3 o'clock, we'll have more rain popping up. So that's the deal for us on this Mother's Day weekend. 60% rain chances for us today. Mid-80s, yeah, that's going to be a stretch today. Tomorrow, not so much, as the rain chances will be less. And then we get to the upper 80s by the time we get to Monday. Just know that that's going to be the trend going forward here today. Hopefully you'll be able to get out and spend some time, maybe plan some indoor activities like I suggested you would do last week, and maybe treat mom to the kind of celebration that you know she's worthy of. Be safe out there. We'll be watching and tracking for you right here at KPRC2.